Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, where everything you're about to hear and see has been done in one take. I'm your host, the One Take Man. It's fair to say that for most of my adult life, I have been perhaps not terminally online, but very online. And within that time, I've been able to discover and rediscover a broad variety of TV series, movies, and really media franchises in general. However, over the course of my explorations of the media landscape, in terms of me, mitigating my FOMO, I I found one particular title that has been conspicuous in its absence, namely Special Unit 2, a show which I occasionally watched, in my high school days. And now, don't get me wrong; it's not as though this show has disappeared off the internet. It still has its own Wikipedia, IMDb, and even TMDb, whatever the hell that is, pages. However, its fan base seems to be, seems to not be as active as it may have once been. This show doesn't have its own fandom wiki, even though it arguably has the lore to justify having one. However, it does occasionally show up in various, on various TV and entertainment themed wikis, and and therefore it sits in this kind of weird bubble where it is both, where it is both obscure, but obscure even though, but also, uh, uh, but also oddly rich in detail, at least to me. And I found myself wondering, why exactly does this show have this little of a reputation? So I decided to answer that question for myself, and I watched through the show in its entirety, 19 episodes spread over 2 seasons, in order to in order to find in order to find an answer. The basic idea behind this show is that uh, the generally accepted understanding of human evolution is partly wrong, in the sense that the various intermediate species between humans and their progenitors have not actually gone extinct, and in fact have interacted with humans throughout most of history, to the point where they actually, to the point where where the members of these intermediate species, or links, as the show refers to them, have actually inspired a lot of the folklore surrounding supernatural beings all around the world. And and this show, in its in its modern iteration, follows the activity of a secret division within the Chicago Police Department called Special Unit 2, which is tasked with tasked with making sure that these links don't cause any serious harm, or that or that they get dealt with should they do so, which would perhaps be a more accurate way of saying it. This show is typically labeled as a science fiction comedy, or occasionally a dramedy. However, I think a better description for it would be a paranormal police procedural, in the same vein as the X-Files, though perhaps with more of a comedic bent, similar to the Men in Black animated series or Good vs. Evil. Um, the lead characters are Kate Benson, played by Alexandra Lee, who is a straight-laced, by-the-book cop with a history of witnessing the paranormal and being disbelieved, and Nick O'Malley, played by Michael Landis, who is a menace to society, with Richard Gant um, uh, playing the leader of Special Unit 2, once again typecast as gruff and in charge, and Danny Woodburn playing Carl, a sticky-fingered and lecherous gnome who is a begrudging ally to the unit, given he is their main contact to the Link underworld. So from what I've said so far, you might think, okay, that doesn't sound that doesn't sound particularly bad. The idea behind the show is is quite interesting, and the cast, insofar as I've presented it, while somewhat typical of the genre, maybe even a little bit of a throwback, especially considering the time when this show was made, uh, still has still has plenty of variety to it, and therefore a lot of potential for captivating interactions and storylines. So, how does this show utilize its potential? The first season, which consists of 6 episodes, very much leans into the suspense and secrecy aspects of the show. Very much dwelling into the shadows, and thereby being occasionally capable of very effectively presenting its villains, not just as uh, not just as different characters, but really uh, really as threats, threats of significant danger, more very quite horror-esque on occasion. And I found that approach to be to be very effective and very eye-catching for the most part. This first season, while short, also brings with it the first, I'll say, major misstep that the show goes on. Um, okay, there are arguably a few, but the one major misstep I am talking about is the fact that in its 5th episode, the second to last of the season, it very much strays away from its central premise, in that the villain of that episode is straight up a 50s horror movie monster, a link which has uh, been created, whatever you want to call it, out of the fat that has been collected at a liposuction clinic. The show doesn't really deviate that far, and that far away from its central premise in other episodes, but it does, showcase a turning point where the series, turns towards more generic paranormal, um, paranormal aspects in order to really flesh itself out. Another problem is actually related to the to the way in which the this unit itself, or rather its members, are presented as operating. More on that later. The second season, which consists of 13 episodes, is likely the one that most people will perhaps have in their mind when they if this show is mentioned at all, and uh, that season primarily is marked by a significant shift in tone. The first third of it, more or less, is still in keeping with that same horror-esque vibe that the first season introduced. However, as it progressed, it eventually leaned much more into the comedy that is that is endemic to its premise, playing around with the elements with the elements of the show just that little bit more, occasionally yielding dividends, but also occasionally not. Also, there's a new member of the opening credits cast, with Jonathan Togo joining, joining the show and replacing the guy who originally played their science consultant, so to speak. When this show wasn't covering the villain plot, it was typically doing its best to add a little bit of mythos or lore, uh, such as by giving its characters either backstories or connections to to other characters or the broader world. On the one hand, or on the other hand, when it emphasized additional aspects of the the secrecy of what it is actually like to work within Special Unit 2, such as such as for example the spin doctor that uh, that the show occasionally employs in order to provide cover stories to the press, or uh, or when the members of Special Unit 2 occasionally clash with the members of regular PD due to one not recognizing the jurisdiction of the other. That sounds like kind of a mess, but really it is the kind of mess that one would expect from from a show like this. And for the most part, that chaos has in fact been well managed, and in many ways created what I think would be some of the best moments of that show. um, some of the best moments of that show. It never really went into full dirty cop territory, even though it did it did expose some friction in terms of the in terms of how cops are typically portrayed. But given the slight anti-authoritarian bent that this show occasionally had, I wouldn't rule out it eventually going in that direction if it would have gotten a third season. What I find myself being less than pleased with, and this is something that has been a problem with the show ever since arguably ever since the first episode, is all the police brutality. And by that I mean all the ways in which the witness links, or even generally the links that cooperate with them, are depicted, are constantly threatened or abused in some capacity. And one could argue that there is no ethical conundrum here, because because this is done to characters who are endemically who aren't human, and therefore there aren't any rule breaches or anything like that. However, ethics concerns aside, the fact that the show very maybe not very, but still casually, arguably callously, dismisses a lot of its dismisses even its non-threatening links, really showcases the character problem that it had, namely the fact that it showcased all of its non-human characters, aka most of its characters, not necessarily as characters, but as obstacles or targets, something that they had to either navigate, overcome, or shoot. And because of that, they never really sat down to really flesh them out, make them more interesting to behold, and in turn that also affected the quality of the show, because because viewers didn't really have a lot to return to after they watched one episode. So yeah, it is really that it really is that lack of creative involvement, plus the police brutality, which definitely would not fly in a post BLM world, that I think condemned the show to obscurity. And even its even its chemistry and its rapport between its leads, wouldn't have saved it, even though it was generally done quite well. We're soon approaching the 25th anniversary of Special Unit 2, or more precisely of its debut. However, I doubt there will be anything akin to a revival, remake, reboot, or whatever. There might be a cast reunion at some point in order to discuss some things about it, maybe. But I think that will be about it, if that happens at all. Because for now, at least, the paranormal procedural has very effectively been, is very much dead in television. It is only active in the online medium, and it is only active in the online medium because of three letters: SCP. The SCP Foundation has very much cornered and monopolized the market on the paranormal procedural, and and is proving itself to have an immeasurable potential, to the point where it blows everything else within this genre out of the water. Very much holding it, the genre, in a stranglehold. What makes me so certain of its of its successes? Carnival Row. It debuted in 2019, so years after the after the SCP Foundation got started, and despite having a 4-season run, is still somewhat of a footnote. Perhaps comparable to Special Unit 2, if one were to really consider it. Though I do think Carnival Row has its own fandom wiki. I'll have to check on that to make sure. Still, it is not unlikely for the SCP Foundation to eventually falter, at which point it is likely that paranormal procedural will be picked up again by by creators from other forms of media, maybe even TV. Who knows? However, if the genre comes back to TV, I doubt that a revival or remake or reboot of Special Unit 2 will be really be among the beneficiaries. Though one could dream. I'll dream at another time. For now, I would like to thank you for your attention. If you've enjoyed my overview or retrospective or whatever I decide to call it, well then please like the video, maybe even share it wherever you think other people will also like the video. If you have anything you'd like to add, either to the show itself or to my overview, well then that's what the comment section is for. And if you want to see when my next video gets released, well then please subscribe. And ideally also ring the bell or do whatever else YouTube will ask of you in order to keep you notified. I also have a main channel where I primarily talk about the print medium and selected works therein. So if that sounds like something you would be interested in exploring, then I suggest you go ahead and check it out. The link is in the description, right past my social media links, which I also suggest you check out should you choose to. If, however, you want to hear more about me talking about movies, TV series, potentially even video games, either in terms of reviewing those or pitching them, or maybe even occasionally doing a retrospective on them, well then I suggest you stay on this channel and going for my large backlog, where I have a lot of that and various other stuff that I've been that I've worked on. Who knows? Something from there might actually connect to you as well. And if none of that speaks to you, then I suggest you go ahead and do whatever you want the rest of your day, because it is your day after all. For now, however, I can safely say that I am done. So until next time, assuming there will be a next time, that's up to you, I have been the One Take Man.